Fear in education. It's a huge topic that's going to have to be dealt with if education reform can happen. So if you got the first take, I was talking about fear is kind of especially at least in the public education spheres that I've experienced, and that includes college. Fear is kind of like the air a lot of people breathe. The fear of politicians of losing their jobs if they make bad educational choices and their opponents, manage to turn that into a talking point. The fear of principals losing funding and losing jobs. The fear of teachers losing jobs. The fear of students, either losing grades or just the fear that they're bringing from home with them because they've had bad experiences that morning. So, fear is something that has to be dealt with because fear is part of what causes trauma. And there's a lot of times that fear of losing jobs, losing opportunities, losing money, in turns to people exerting control, poor control. So it's micromanagement. And a lot of times that fear of losing power, control, money, all those things turns to micromanagement. And micromanagement tends to run... micromanagement just leads to bad form, just all the way across. If you're micromanaging someone, you're not paying attention to what you should be doing, and you're not God, and you can't handle everybody. And micromanagement, in turn, leads to more fear because there's always elements of manipulation. There's always elements of not abuse, but abusive type behaviors that lead to bad working environment, which leads to anger and fear in the dark side. And it's that fear of the unknown, the fear of change for some educators, bad or good change, the fear of things suddenly changing, the fear of losing your job, or the fear of losing, really not being able to budget because you don't know if the next year someone's going to cut your pay. All right? All of these things are, and they're not even like, how do you teach? These are just positional fears and financial fears, and all of these things are part of what is really a hostile environment for working in. And when you have that sort of fear going on, you're in. It's like having the fear of something, like when things are really stressful at home. It clouds your mind. It clouds your judgment. You make poor decisions, and again, it's that cycle. And education reform has to deal with that traumatic fear that people are undergoing to make strides. And this, I can't say that I have a solution, right? Because there's not really a blanket solution to fear. Because fear partly has to do with yourself and how you view the world and your desire to control things. It has to deal with real world environments, again, the fear of losing jobs. And then it also has to do with the fact that you're really working very, very deeply and emotionally and personally with age groups that are still learning and figuring things out. I mean, I tell my students all the time, like, you have a hard time believing me about real world advice because I've never left high school. Like, I've never left that thing that people grow out of. And that group, that age group, teens and before that, they haven't learned to deal with fear, and they haven't learned coping skills, and they haven't learned a lot of those things that we as adults have, but we're still in that emotional upheaval, that turmoil, and like secondary trauma, I've seen it called recently. I've read some really good articles on that. And again, to change education, people are going to have to deal with that fear factor. And what I've seen so far about Next, where I've been, and this is me, okay, I operate great in an environment of collaboration and guidelines without a lot of control. Like, that's my, and some people, they want all the guidelines. It's not me. So I work really well with that, and I work with incredibly intelligent people who are also very, very competent and artistic, all these things. So I fit in with them. And so we're working together, and that personal contact and that ability to interact with my peers kind of dissolves the fear, because it's an atmosphere of collaboration, and open and talk, and the ability to just go talk to people, because there's structure, at least I feel structure. There's this structure, but there's also this desire to explore, and then we're in the container where that desire is fulfilled. But we personally have ambitions for the students, and as people and as teachers, and as we see what needs to be taught, we're intelligent people who are allowed to form opinions and experiment with those opinions. And then after we've experimented, we've either failed or succeeded. Whatever we fail at, we can either throw out or change. And whatever we sort of succeed, or what works, we can refine. And it's that knowledge that there's structure, that there's guidance, that there's support from above, but that there's also a container that we can experiment and fail and succeed in without being punished for trying something new, and in fact being encouraged to try something new, is what lessens that fear. And now for some people that doesn't work. Some people are like, I gotta have everything lined up and you have to tell me exactly what it is so I can check off the check boxes. And honestly, I don't know that education is the right fit for someone like that, but it could be. There are different different styles of learning and different styles of teaching. But taking away the fear of failure for the teacher, not just for the students, is one of, I think, the big places where education reform can happen. Because if the teacher isn't afraid of failing, and the teacher doesn't want to work. Like, this isn't like you get out of, you don't have to work. This is, I'm not afraid of trying something new and this failing.
Mama,
hey, babe.
Where Harry is?
I'm probably in the kitchen. You should look. That translates to the students, because we're not trying to control the students. Say, you've got to get this grade. You've got to do this thing. If you don't do this, then I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my money. And like, we're putting all this stuff on the students that shouldn't be on top of them, because we're afraid. And it's coming from the top down, and, it can come from the bottom up. So I see, and this doesn't work everywhere. And I think that's part of the problem, is people want this blanket, this is how you change the world, instead of seeing how you can change the school that you're in, and how that environment can be changed to lessen fear, like real fears. And when that's addressed, and when that's kind of built into a system, then reform can happen, because fear is being dissipated. So I don't know that there's an action step that I can say, except one, if you're a teacher, even if you're in an environment where it really doesn't encourage collaboration, either from the structure, like the way the environment is set up, like the classroom setting, or if you're just not given time, if you can reach out to another teacher or two and say, instead of complaining, which is, part of it, but instead of just complaining, like, what are some things that we can do together to lessen our fear and to make our plans easier to cope with, so that we can create a change in us, so that that fear is not being passed down to students? I would encourage that. And then for administrators, I would say, all right, look at where you are and say, all right, I'm trying to control teacher behavior, which is what it comes down to. I'm trying to control things. How can I, instead of trying to control everything, how can I make a brand experience, an educational environment that lessens the burden and the fear on the teacher and allows them some freedom, knowing that my job is on the line, but I'm willing to trust these professionals to do their job and to kind of let some of that go. For politicians, I don't know, probably get some moral standards and care about people, and then see where it goes from there. So that's my action plan. Get rid of the fear, lessen the fear. Can't get rid of it, but lessen the fear, and see how your educational experience and environment changes. Thank you.